When was the last time you threw away something that could have been useful? Our grandparents would have cringed at half the things we toss in the trash today. They lived in a time when creativity wasn't optional. It was survival. These weren't trendy life hacks or Instagram-worthy shortcuts. These were real solutions passed down through kitchens and backyard fences, tested through hard times and proven to work. Today, we're diving into 25 household hacks that poor families relied on, tricks that save real money, and actually work better than half the products we buy today. Reusing tea bags. Tea bags serve multiple cups in households where pennies mattered. After the first steeping, the bag was carefully placed on a saucer to dry. The second cup required longer steeping time, but still produced acceptable tea. Some families kept used tea bags in a small bowl in the refrigerator, combining 2 or 3 for a pot that served several people. But tea bags had uses beyond making tea. Damp and used bags soothed tired, puffy eyes, reduced swelling from minor injuries, and helped heal small burns. They cleaned and shined leather shoes without expensive polish. They removed lingering odors from hands after handling fish or cutting onions. Buried in houseplant soil, they provided nutrients and helped retain moisture. Women discovered that strong black tea helped disguise gray roots between expensive dye jobs. The tannins in tea cleaned mirrors and windows without leaving streaks. During World War II rationing, families might get 4 or 5 uses from a single bag. A box of 48 tea bags cost about 39 cents in 1950. By reusing them strategically, a family stretched that box from 6 weeks to 4 or 5 months. Children learned to drink their tea weak without complaining. Understanding this was how you made things last. Making DIY air fresheners with citrus. Before aerosol air fresheners, families created natural alternatives that smell better and cost nothing. Orange and lemon peels from breakfast or dessert never went immediately into the trash. Instead, they simmered on the stove with cinnamon sticks and whole cloves, filling the house with welcoming scent. During holidays, this potpourri might simmer all day, perfuming the house while adding humidity to dry winter air. Dried citrus peels were placed in closets and drawers, keeping clothes fresh and deterring moths better than mothballs. Some families made pomanders by studding whole oranges with cloves, creating decorative air fresheners that lasted months hanging in closets or displayed in bowls. Lemon peels rubbed on cutting boards cleaned and deodorized them. Later, when garbage disposals arrived, frozen lemon peels kept them fresh-smelling. The oils and citrus peels also worked as furniture polish when rubbed directly on wood. This saved money while avoiding artificial fragrances that some people found overwhelming. A can of commercial air freshener cost 49 cents in 1960 and lasted perhaps a month. Meanwhile, citrus peels from fruit the family was eating anyway provided free, natural fragrance year-round. Houses smelled like actual oranges and spices rather than synthetic approximations of these scents. Using vinegar as a cleaning agent. Walk into any grocery store in 1952 and you find maybe 3 or 4 cleaning products total. Walk into a home and you find a gallon jug of white vinegar doing the work of 20 different bottles. Cost about 35 cents back then, which translates to around $3 today. The difference is that $3 jug could clean your entire house for months. Families mixed at different strengths for different jobs. 1 part vinegar to 4 parts water went into old glass bottles for everyday cleaning, wiping down counters, cleaning windows, mopping floors. For tougher jobs like baked-on oven grease or lime deposits around faucets, they'd use it straight or maybe cut it 2-to-1 with water. The smell was sharp, sure, but it disappeared within minutes and didn't leave behind chemical residue that made kids cough or gave headaches. Women discovered that vinegar cleaned chrome fixtures better than anything, left mirrors streak-free, and cut through soap scum in bathtubs without the harsh fumes of commercial cleaners. Some families kept 3 or 4 different dilutions going at once, each one labeled for its specific purpose. The real genius wasn't just the money saved, though replacing a dozen specialty cleaners with 1 cheap jug was significant. It was a safety factor. You could clean while babies crawled on the floor and not worry. You could wipe down high chairs without rinsing. Modern professional cleaners often charge premium rates while using the same vinegar solution Grandma used for pennies. Boiling potato peels for soup. Potato peel soup sounds shocking to modern ears, but it was standard fare in households where nothing got wasted. This wasn't about being too poor to buy potatoes. Families ate the potatoes. This was about using every part of them. Throughout the week, when Mom peeled potatoes for dinner, those peels went into a covered pot in the icebox or cool cellar corner. Come Sunday, usually after church, she'd give those peels a thorough washing, scrubbing off any dirt or eyes. Then into the soup pot they went. Add an onion, maybe the green tops from carrots, celery leaves that were too bitter for salads, whatever vegetable odds and ends had accumulated. If there was a ham bone from Sunday dinner the week before, or bacon ends from breakfast, that went in too. The pot would simmer for hours until everything was soft and the water had turned into legitimate broth. Here's what they knew that we've forgotten. Most of potatoes' nutrition sits right under that skin. The peels contain more fiber, iron, and B vitamins than the white flesh inside. A pot of potato peel soup of vegetables and a bit of meat could feed 6 people a filling lunch. Some families got fancy with it, adding barley to make it heartier or thickening it with a flour roux. Others kept it simple, just the peels and whatever was on hand. During the Depression, this kind of resourcefulness kept people going. One woman who lived through it told her grandchildren that throwing away potato peels was like tossing money in the garbage. Modern nutritionists would actually agree with her. We're told now to eat potatoes with the skins on for maximum nutrition. These families were ahead of their time. Reusing tin foil. Aluminum foil was treated like a precious resource in tight budget homes. After you use it to cover a casserole or wrap leftovers, you didn't crumple it up and toss it. You carefully smoothed it out, washed it gently with soapy water, and either hung it to dry over the sink edge or laid it flat on the counter. Some families had an entire drawer dedicated to folded used foil, organized by size and how worn it was. The barely creased pieces got saved for when company came over. More crumpled pieces became pot scrubbers. Really worn pieces got wadded into balls and used to scour cast iron pans. During World War II, this wasn't just about being thrifty, it was patriotic. The government collected scrap aluminum for making airplanes, and families took pride in using every piece multiple times before finally contributing it to the war effort. Even after the war ended, the habit stuck. A roll of aluminum foil in 1960 cost about 39 cents, equivalent to nearly $4 today. If you reused each sheet 3 or 4 times, a single roll could last half a year instead of 6 weeks. Kids learned to unwrap their school sandwiches carefully, fold up the foil, and bring it home in their pockets for reuse. This kind of care seems extreme now, but it represented something deeper than just saving money. It was respect for resources and understanding that everything had value and nothing should be wasted carelessly. Women would compare notes on how long they could make a roll last, taking genuine pride in stretching it to 8 or 9 months through careful reuse. Making homemade candles. Candle making from scraps happened in most thrifty households. Every time a candle burned down, the remaining stub went into a coffee can. Birthday candles, dinner tapers, emergency candles, all the wax got saved until there was enough to make new candles. The process was simple but required attention. Melt the accumulated wax stubs in a double boiler on the stove, making sure it didn't get hot enough to ignite. Meanwhile, make wicks from cotton string, braided together and soaked in salt water, which helped them burn evenly. Molds came for whatever was available. Old milk cartons, clean tin cans, even holes dug in sandbox sand for fancy shapes. Pour the melted wax, center the wick, and wait for it to harden. In the 1950s, electricity was expensive and sometimes unreliable, especially in rural areas. Having homemade candles meant backup, lighting that cost nothing. Even in cities, families made candles for atmosphere and economy. Kids helped by decorating plain candles with crayon designs or pressing dried flowers into the warm wax. A pound of new paraffin wax cost about 15 cents in 1955, but families rarely bought it. They survived entirely on recycled wax from used candles. These homemade candles might not have been perfectly straight or evenly colored, but they burned just as long as store-bought ones that cost $1 or more. Some families got creative, layering different colored waxes from various sources to create striped candles or adding a few drops of vanilla extract for scented candles before that became a whole industry. Sewing up small holes in clothes. Mending clothes wasn't considered a chore so much as an essential skill. The darning egg and needle were tools every household had, usually kept in a sewing basket by mother's chair. Evenings were spent catching small holes before they became big problems. Socks were darned repeatedly, some families joking that certain socks were more darning than original fabric. Shirt elbows were reinforced with iron-on patches or sewn patches before they wore through. Pants' knees were double-layered as soon as they started showing wear. This wasn't poverty. It was responsibility. A new pair of work pants cost $3 in 1950, representing a full day's wages for many workers. Keeping them mended and serviceable for an extra year meant real household savings. The skill was taught to daughters as essential knowledge, like cooking or cleaning. They learned different stitches for different repairs. Blanket stitch for preventing fabric edges from unraveling, running stitch for reattaching seams, careful darning weave for holes. Patches became decorative, especially on children's clothes. Mothers would embroider flowers around mended areas or use contrasting thread to make repairs into features rather than something to hide. This mending culture meant clothes lasted decades instead of seasons. Wedding dresses served multiple generations. Work clothes survived entire careers. Children's clothes passed through multiple families, carefully mended at each stage, accumulating history and stories with each repair. Reusing buttons and zippers. Button jars were treasure chests in every frugal household. When clothing wore beyond any possible repair, buttons were carefully snipped off with scissors or cut away with sharp knife. Good zippers were removed with seam rippers and stored flat between pieces of cardboard. These notions were valuable. A card of 6 buttons cost 25 cents in 1950. A decent zipper cost 35 cents or more. Over years, families accumulated impressive collections. Mason jars filled with buttons of every size, color, and style became resources for both mending and creating. Children learned fine motor skills by sorting buttons by color or size, or stringing them on thread. When a shirt lost a button, the jar yielded a close enough match, or sometimes an intentional mismatch that became a design choice. Really special buttons could transform plain homemade clothes into something remarkable. Metal zippers were even more valuable than buttons, carefully matched in new sewing projects. A quality metal zipper could outlast 3 or 4 garments. Some women specialized in recovering zippers, becoming the neighborhood expert other families consulted. The button jar represented decades of accumulated clothing, each button holding memories of the garment it came from. Creating homemade ice packs. Commercial ice packs didn't exist in most homes until the 1970s, so families improvised. The simplest method was wetting a sponge thoroughly and freezing it inside a plastic bag. This created a flexible cold pack that molded injuries like sprained ankles or bumped knees. Others filled rubber gloves with water and froze them, with each finger providing a small ice source for specific areas. Some discovered accidentally that frozen bags of peas or corn worked perfectly, staying flexible while cold and conforming to body parts. For longer-lasting cold therapy, resourceful families mix 1 part rubbing alcohol with 3 parts water in sturdy bags. This mixture stayed slushy when frozen, never becoming rock hard, perfect for reducing swelling. Cloth bags filled with rice and frozen provided gentler cold that didn't cause ice burns. These homemade versions often worked better than commercial products because they could be customized. Need something small for a child's bruised forehead? Freeze a wet washcloth folded into quarters. Need something larger for a back injury? A frozen wet towel did the job. The cost difference was dramatic. Commercial ice packs cost $3 to $5 in 1960s money. Homemade versions cost pennies and could be refrozen indefinitely. Families kept multiple sponges and bags in the freezer, always ready for the next injury. Repurposing old clothes for rags. Turning worn-out clothing into cleaning rags was practically an art form. Every household had what they called a rag bag, usually an old pillowcase or flour sack stuffed under the kitchen sink. When Dad's work shirt finally gave up after the collar frayed and the elbows wore through, it didn't go in the trash. Mom would sit down with her good scissors and cut it into squares, maybe 10 or 12 pieces from a single shirt. She knew exactly what each piece was good for. Soft cotton from old undershirts made the best dust cloths because they didn't leave lint. Flannel from worn pajamas was perfect for polishing silverware or applying furniture wax. Terry cloth from old towels tackled the heavy scrubbing jobs, the bathtub, the oven, dirty shoes. Families got particular about this. The really soft pieces went into a separate pile for washing the baby or wiping faces. Rougher pieces went to garage for cleaning tools and car parts. Some women even saved wool scraps and felted them into trivets and pot holders. A bed sheet past its prime could produce 20 good-sized cleaning cloths that would last for years if you washed and dried them properly. Families would pin them to the clothesline where the sun would naturally bleach and sanitize them. The savings added up faster than you'd think. Paper towels hit the market in the 1930s, but didn't become standard until the 1960s. A family using cloth rags instead of paper towels saved about $40 annually in 1955 money, which would be close to $500 today. The irony is those cloth rags actually work better. They absorb more, scrub harder, and didn't fall apart when wet. You could use the same rag for years while going through paper towels by the roll every week. Growing herbs and windowsills. Fresh herbs cost a small fortune in stores, if you could find them at all. So families grew their own on sunny windowsills. Small pots or clean tin cans with nail holes punched in the bottom held parsley, chives, basil, and thyme. These few plants transformed cooking. A handful of fresh basil leaves made plain tomato sauce taste like something from an Italian restaurant. Fresh parsley brightened any dish and provided vitamins during winter months when fresh produce was scarce and expensive. The initial investment was minimal. Seed packets cost 10 cents. More often, neighbors shared cuttings that rooted easily in water. With basic care, a single parsley plant produced garnish for months. Some families painted and decorated old coffee cans for herb pots, turning them into kitchen decorations. Others built small shelf units across kitchen windows, creating herb gardens that also provided privacy from neighbors. The practice wasn't purely economic. Fresh herbs simply weren't available in most grocery stores before the 1970s. Having them meant the difference between bland food and flavorful meals. A small window garden could save $2 or $3 weekly on dried herbs, significant money when the average family spent $15 to $20 total on groceries. Using baking soda as a deodorizer. Baking soda did more jobs than most people had in their entire house. A 1-pound box cost maybe 8 cents in 1950 and solved problems in every room. Families figured out it was basically magic for neutralizing smells. Not covering them up with perfume, actually eliminating them. They'd shake it into shoes at night, especially work boots that had been sweated in all day, and the next morning the smell would be gone. A small bowl of it sat permanently in the icebox, later the refrigerator, absorbing food odors. Changed it once a month, and the old stuff went down the drain to freshen pipes. Carpets got sprinkled before bed, then swept up in the morning, taking dog's smell and mustiness with it. Mothers with babies in cloth diapers would add a quarter cup to the diaper pail, cut the ammonia smell by half. Even ashtrays, and everyone smoked back then, got a layer of baking soda in the bottom to keep cigarette odor from taking over the room. The science was simple but effective. Most odors are either acidic or basic, and baking soda neutralizes both without just covering them up with fragrance. Smart families bought it in 10-pound bags from farm supply stores where it cost even less. That one product replaced what would eventually become an entire aisle at the grocery store. Carpet fresheners, refrigerator deodorizers, shoe sprays, pet odor removers, bathroom fresheners. All of them expensive, most of them just masking smells with perfume. Some fancy hotels still use baking soda for carpet deodorizing because nothing works better. Making homemade shampoos and soaps. Making homemade shampoo and soap was a yearly ritual in many homes. Soap making day usually happened in fall, often outdoors because of the fumes and heat. Families save cooking fats all year. Every drop of bacon grease, beef tallow, chicken fat, stored in coffee cans. When soap making day arrived, they'd mix those fats with lye made from wood ash and water. The process was dangerous. Lye could burn skin badly if splashed, and the mixture had to be stirred constantly at exactly the right temperature. But the result was enough soap to last a family an entire year, maybe 20 or 30 bars. Store soap cost about 10 cents a bar in 1950. Homemade soap cost pennies per bar, even counting the lye. Shampoo recipes circulated through neighborhoods like secret formulas. One popular version mixed a raw egg yolk with a tablespoon of lemon juice and a teaspoon of olive oil. You massage into wet hair, let it sit a minute, then rinse thoroughly with warm water, followed by a cold water rinse to make hair shine. Another recipe used diluted Castile soap, followed by a vinegar rinse to remove soap residue. Some families discovered that plain baking soda mixed with water cleaned hair perfectly, then an apple cider vinegar rinse for conditioning. These homemade products were often gentler than commercial versions, which were loaded with harsh detergents that stripped hair of natural oils. Women who used homemade shampoo frequently had thicker, shinier hair than those using store brands. The cost difference was dramatic. Commercial shampoo in the 1950s cost 35 to 50 cents a bottle. Homemade versions cost maybe 5 cents total. Repurposing old jars for storage. Every glass jar that came into the house got saved. Pickle jars, jelly jars, mayonnaise jars, even baby food jars. After a thorough washing, they moved to their new purpose. In the garage or basement workshop, small baby food jars hung under shelves, their lids nailed to the wood with the jars screwing into place below. Each one held different hardware. Screws sorted by size, washers, nuts, bolts, nails. You could see at a glance what you had. In the kitchen, larger jars stored flour, sugar, rice, beans. This kept them fresh and protected from bugs better than the paper sacks they came in. Mason jars weren't reserved for canning. They became drinking glasses, flower vases, and lunch containers. The really attractive jars, maybe from fancy mustard or imported preserves, got saved for gift giving. Fill them with homemade jam, layer cookie ingredients for a friend to bake, or pack homemade soup mix. Before Tupperware revolutionized food storage in the 1960s, glass jars did everything for free. They lasted forever unless dropped, didn't stain, didn't hold odors, and cost nothing. Some families accumulated hundreds of jars, organized by size and shape in basements or pantries. Depression-era adults often couldn't throw away jars even decades later, when they could easily afford commercial containers. The habit was too ingrained, and honestly, the jars worked perfectly well, turning old bread into croutons. Day-old bread never saw the inside of a trash can. When a loaf started going stale, it began its second life. Croutons were the easiest transformation. Cut the bread into cubes, toss with, say, bacon drippings or butter mixed with garlic powder. Toast in the oven until golden. These homemade croutons had 10 times the flavor of anything from a box and cost nothing extra, since the bread was already paid for. But bread's usefulness went way beyond croutons. Stale slices became French toast, bread pudding, or stuffing for chicken. Dried completely, they were ground with rolling pin into breadcrumbs for topping casseroles or coating chicken. Italian families made panzanella, soaking hard bread in tomato juice and olive oil until it softened. Jewish households created bread kugel. Even if mold appeared, they cut off the affected area and used the rest. During the Depression, some families made bread coffee by toasting slices until almost black, then steeping them in hot water for a bitter but warm drink. A single loaf could stretch into ingredients for 5 or 6 different meals throughout the week. This wasn't just about frugality. Homemade bread took significant time and effort to make, so wasting any of it felt disrespectful to that work. Studies show Americans today throw away about 40% of the bread they buy. Earlier generations wasted virtually none. They understood that food was too valuable to discard just because it had gone a little stale. Reusing toothbrushes for cleaning. When a toothbrush finished its dental duty, its real career began. Every household kept a collection of old toothbrushes designated for cleaning tasks. The small bristles reached places nothing else could touch. That narrow groove around the bathroom sink drain where grime accumulated. The tracks on sliding windows. The tiny crevices in jewelry. Each toothbrush in the collection had its job based on how worn it was. Newly retired toothbrushes handled shoe care, working polish into leather seams and around stitching. Medium-worn brushes clean tile grout, scrub stubborn stains from clothing, or clean typewriter keys and later computer keyboards. The most worn brushes got the dirtiest jobs. Cleaning car battery terminals, scrubbing garden tools, removing rust from small metal objects. Some families marked their cleaning brushes with nail polish or notched the handles to avoid any confusion with current toothbrushes. Before specialty cleaning brushes flooded the market, these repurposed toothbrushes solved dozens of problems. They cleaned intricate wood carvings, removed lint from sewing machines, scrub around faucet bases, even groomed pets' faces where larger brushes wouldn't fit. At 25 cents each in 1950, roughly $3 today, a toothbrush was an investment. Getting 2 or 3 years of cleaning use after its dental life ended made perfect economic sense. Women's magazines occasionally publish lists of cleaning uses for old toothbrushes, sometimes suggesting 20 or more applications. Using salt to keep food fresh. Salt kept families fed before freezers were common. Meat preservation relied on heavy salting. Families would buy pork shoulders when they went on sale, pack them completely in salt, and hang them in cool basements to cure into ham over several months. Cabbage was shredded and salted to make sauerkraut in large crocks. Fish was layered with salt for storage. Even eggs could be preserved in saltwater solutions called water glass. The principle was simple. Salt drew out moisture, creating an environment where bacteria couldn't multiply. This wasn't just Depression-era desperation. Many families continued salt preservation into the 1960s because the results tasted better than frozen food. Salt-cured country ham had a depth and complexity that no fresh ham could match. Homemade sauerkraut and pickles had beneficial bacteria that store-bought versions, which were pasteurized, lacked. A 50-pound bag of salt cost about $1 in 1950 and could preserve hundreds of pounds of food. The technique required knowledge and attention. Too little salt and food spoiled. Too much and it became inevitably salty. But families developed instincts, knowing by touch and experience exactly how much salt each food needed. Root cellars stayed full all winter with salt-preserved foods that kept families eating well when fresh produce was unavailable and expensive. Making soup stock from leftovers. The stock pot simmering on the back burner was the mark of a frugal kitchen. Every bone from dinner, every carrot top, celery leaf, and onion skin went into that pot. Nothing was too small or too scrappy. Chicken carcasses were especially prized, simmered until the bones were soft enough to crumble between your fingers. This perpetual pot wasn't just about stretching food. It was about capturing nutrients that would otherwise be lost. Bones released calcium, phosphorus, and other minerals into the water. Vegetable scraps contributed vitamins. The resulting stock was rich, flavorful, and nutritious. Families would strain it weekly, using the golden liquid for soups, gravies, cooking rice or beans, anywhere water was needed for cooking. The strained-out solids went to chickens if you kept them, or into the compost pile. Some households ran a perpetual pot, adding water and fresh scraps daily, creating complex flavors that developed over weeks. The stock transformed cheap ingredients into satisfying meals. Plain rice became risotto. Stale bread became stuffing. Tough cuts of meat became tender stew. Before bouillon cubes took over American kitchens in the 1960s, this homemade stock provided the flavor foundation for countless meals. The cost was nothing but the gas or electricity to keep it simmering. A pot of homemade stock made Monday's soup taste like it came from a restaurant. Tuesday's gravy had depth that packet mixes couldn't match. Making do with leftover fat. Every drop of cooking fat was saved and reused. Bacon grease was the most treasured, poured while still warm into coffee cans kept next to the stove. Chicken fat was rendered down and saved. Beef tallow was too valuable to discard. These fats replaced expensive butter and cooking oil, adding incredible flavor to everything they touched. Vegetables roasted in chicken fat had richness that plain oil never achieved. Eggs fried in bacon grease needed no additional seasoning. Biscuits made with saved fats were flaky and flavorful. Beyond cooking, these fats had numerous uses. Mixed with flour, they became roux for gravies. Combined with lye, they turned into soap. During extremely hard times, they were spread on bread. Some people actually preferred the taste. Families also use clean fats to waterproof work boots, condition leather, and keep tools from rusting. The coffee can of bacon grease by the stove became such a universal sight that it symbolized American home cooking. Even as late as the 1970s, most households kept one. The flavor it added to food was irreplaceable. Green beans cooked with a spoonful of bacon grease tasted completely different than those cooked in butter or oil. Cornbread made with saved fat was moist and rich. Modern cooking has largely abandoned animal fats for health reasons, but earlier generations relied on them for both flavor and economy. Stretching meat with fillers. When meat was the priciest item on the grocery list, creative cooks made it stretch. A single pound of ground beef that might serve 4 people became dinner for 8 with the right additions. Mix in breadcrumbs or crushed crackers. Add an egg to bind it. Grate in some carrots or potatoes for moisture and bulk. Season it heavily with onions, garlic powder, salt, and pepper so the meat flavor carried throughout. This worked for more than just meatloaf. Hamburger patties got the same treatment. Formed thin and cooked carefully so they held together. Some families swore by specific ratios. 1 pound of meat, 1 cup of breadcrumbs, 1 egg, and 1 finely chopped onion made 8 decent patties that tasted like real burgers if seasoned right. During particularly lean times, that ratio might flip with more filler than meat. Casseroles were another stretching strategy. A small amount of meat flavored a large dish of noodles, rice, or potatoes. Spaghetti sauce used half a pound of ground beef with extra tomatoes, peppers, and mushrooms to serve 6 people. These techniques saved families $70 to $100 monthly in 1950s currency, close to $1,000 today, while still providing protein-rich meals. The key was seasoning. Properly spiced, stretch meat dishes tasted nearly as good as pure meat versions. Kids often didn't realize they were eating half breadcrumbs. Turning old curtains into new clothes. Fabric was expensive enough that curtains got a second life as clothing. Those cheerful kitchen curtains with their bright prints became little girls' summer dresses. Heavy living room drapes transformed into winter coats. The fabric quality was often superior to what families could afford new. Bark cloth curtains from the 1940s were practically indestructible, tightly woven and color fast. The transformation required sewing skill and patience. A child's dress needed about 2 yards of fabric, which would cost $3 to $4 at the store in 1950. Made from old curtains, it cost nothing but time and thread. Mothers would carefully take curtains apart, wash the fabric thoroughly, and either use newspaper patterns or trace existing clothes for sizing. Feed sack fabric was similarly treasured. Flour and animal feed came in printed cotton sacks, specifically designed for repurposing. Some companies printed patterns that lined up when multiple sacks were sewn together. Wearing curtain fabric clothes carried no shame. A cleverly made dress from beautiful material might draw compliments and envy. The practice continued through the 1960s, declining only when imported clothing made new clothes affordable. Some curtains were so well made that they outlasted their window assignments by decades, eventually clothing entire families. Fixing leaky roofs with tar. Professional roof repair was beyond most budgets, so fathers became amateur roofers with buckets of tar. A 5-gallon bucket cost about $2 in 1950 and could patch dozens of leaks over several years. The technique was straightforward but effective. Locate the leak. Clean the area, brush or trowel on tar liberally, sometimes reinforcing it with fabric or metal patches. On flat roofs, families spread tar with old brooms, creating new waterproof layers that sealed everything. For shingle repairs, tar was gently heated and poured into cracks and gaps. Some mixed sawdust with tar for better adhesion and to make it go further. Entire families spent summer weekends on roof duty, knowing that one good tar application could last 3 to 5 years. The work was hot, sticky, and dangerous, done in full sun on sloped surfaces. But a leaking roof meant ruined furniture, damaged ceilings, potential mold, and structural problems. DIY tar patches save hundreds of dollars compared to professional repairs. A basic roofing job cost $300 to $500 in 1950s money, more than a month's wages for many workers. Many homes went 20 or 30 years with nothing but tar patches holding them together. The repairs might have looked ugly, black splotches against weathered shingles, but they kept families dry and freed up money for food, clothing, and other necessities. Using vinegar to soften clothes. Before fabric softener was invented in the 1960s, white vinegar did the same job for pennies. Adding half a cup to the rinse cycle cut through soap residue that made clothes stiff and scratchy. Unlike commercial softeners that would come later, vinegar didn't leave chemical residue or artificial fragrance. It was especially effective on towels, restoring the absorbency that soap buildup destroyed. The acid in vinegar also helped set colors in new clothes, preventing bleeding and remove yellowing from white fabrics. Families discovered that vinegar eliminated odors washing alone couldn't touch. Cigarette smoke embedded in fabrics, mildew from clothes left damp too long, stubborn perspiration smell in work clothes. For heavily soiled items, they'd soak them in vinegar water before washing. Some added a few drops of essential oils to vinegar for light scenting, though most preferred the clean, unscented result. A gallon of vinegar cost about 30 cents in 1950 and softened hundreds of loads of laundry. When commercial fabric softeners hit the market, they cost $1.50 for maybe 20 loads. Thrifty families stuck with vinegar, saving $60 to $80 annually. The practice saw a revival during the environmental movement of the 1970s when people discovered their parents had been right all along, creating homemade draft stoppers. Keeping warm in winter without running up heating bills drove families to creative solutions. Draft stoppers were among the most effective and cheapest. Old socks or worn-out pantyhose were stuffed with sand from the yard, rice from the pantry, or sawdust from woodworking projects, then placed against door bottoms where cold air crept in. Fancier versions used sewn fabric tubes filled with dried beans, or cedar shavings that also repelled insects. These simple devices could reduce heating bills by 10 to 15%. In homes heated by expensive oil or coal, this meant saving $5 to $10 monthly during winter, $50 to $100 over season. That was significant money in the 1950s. Some families made elaborate draft stoppers that doubled as decorative items, shaped like dachshunds or covered in needlepoint designs. Others used simpler solutions like rolled newspapers tied with string. Windows got similar treatment, with rope caulk or rags stuffed in gaps where frames fit poorly. The materials cost nothing. Sand from outside, sawdust in the basement workshop, rice bought in bulk for cooking, socks worn beyond darning. Yet they solved the problem that weather stripping would later address for much more money. Many families made new draft stoppers annually, using that year's worn clothing scraps as filling, creating both insulation and a use for otherwise useless textiles. Using leftover coffee grounds. Used coffee grounds had too much value to throw away. Garden beds received most of them. The nitrogen-rich grounds worked as excellent fertilizer, especially for acid-loving plants like tomatoes, roses, and blueberries. Worked directly into soil, they improved drainage in clay soil and attracted beneficial earthworms. But grounds had numerous other applications. Mixed with little soap, they became an abrasive hand cleaner that removed garage grease and garden dirt better than regular soap. Rubbed carefully on furniture scratches, the brown color masked damage on dark wood. Placed in small dishes in the refrigerator, they absorbed odors even better than baking soda, and you were going to throw them away anyway. Some families dried grounds completely and used them as fireplace kindling, their oils helping paper and would catch fire. Others discovered that mixing grounds with water created brown dye for crafts or fabric. During the Depression, extremely poor families even rebrewed grounds for a second coffee. Weak and bitter, but better than nothing when money was at tight. The practice made both economic and environmental sense. Americans consume billions of pounds of coffee annually, creating mountains of organic waste. A pound of coffee cost about 75 cents in 1950. Getting multiple uses from the ground stretched that investment. Today, gardening stores sell bags of coffee grounds as premium fertilizer for several dollars per bag. If you enjoyed this journey through forgotten household wisdom, hit that like button and share this video with someone who remembers these times, or someone who needs to learn that the old ways often work better. Don't forget to subscribe for more looks at history that shaped how we live today. What household hack did your family use that we didn't cover? Drop it in the comments below.